a herbal enthusiast. I've been tuning in with plant medicine my whole life. My father was a herbalist before me, and so connecting in with cleansing is something that's been part of my lifestyle ever since I was young. In fact, my father created the Wild Rose Detox, and so we did a cleanse every twice a year. And right now is the right time of year to do that. So I'm excited to kind of share more about that. And like I said, we're going to record it and get you all access to the recording afterwards. And stay tuned to the end of the webinar because there is a little promo around getting some cleansing products. Just for a little webinar 101, there is a chat function as well as you have the capacity to ask some questions. So put your questions in the Q&A or in the chat. Let's see. Make sure everybody can hear me. Looks like people said, yep, they're here on time. Share in the chat if you want where you're coming from, what you're doing, any of that kind of stuff. And we're going to dive right in. We've only got 45 minutes to maybe a little longer if we have a bunch of Q&A that we want to do, but let's get right into cleansing. So I'm here just to start. I live on the unceded territory of the Comox First Nations here on Vancouver Island. This is the land of plenty, and I just want to give homage to the ancestral territory of the Comox, the Puntlatch, the Lieksan, and a bunch of other amazing communities who have held this land in the way of a pristine, connected ecosystem. And my hope is that moving forward with plant medicine, we as herbalists and those who are tuning into this really are, with respect, treating our land in a way of creating regenerative practices. And cleansing is one of those things about creating a regenerative practice for ourselves. Little kind of tip is if you cleanse once or twice a year, it will really increase the body's capacity to handle chronic diseases, to work with strengthened immune system, to support the digestion, to overall be able to remove toxins out of our body that in general will create more inflammation and all these kinds of things in the body. So that's what we're going to share a bit about today. We're going to go through kind of why we might cleanse, some of the different herbs we can use, some of the different pathways in the body, and some of the ways we might want to build and sort of create strategy around cleansing. So I hope you're ready. Let's get going. So the first thing I wanted to share is really about the season. I like to look at Chinese medicine as a kind of a good, I guess, template for understanding seasonal energies and seasonal archetypes. We're in the season of spring right now, just past our equinox, and we're into official spring here, which is, in a Chinese medicine perspective, the season of wood and also wind. The flavor is sour, the color is green, and the body organ of most prominence is the liver. So this is the time of year, from that perspective, that we can get better work done with our liver and with detoxifying. If you don't know what the liver does, it basically is the shipper receiver, the great alchemist in the body. It does almost everything. It helps to stabilize our blood sugars, build our iron, detoxify different types of chemicals in our body, work with our hormone load, and really just support the overall cleansing of the body. So it's ideal to do a cleanse during this time of year. We typically have two seasons that are kind of cleansing seasons, which is spring and fall. We don't usually like to do a kind of a herbal cleanse or a diet cleanse during the winter or the summer, really because this is just not the right type of energy for that time of year. But we consider those to be our building seasons. So spring and fall, great time to do cleanse. There's a lot of different ways we can cleanse when it comes to a diet cleanse. There's things like the master cleanse, there's fasting, there's juice cleansing, there's all kinds of different dietary restrictions. What we're going to look at today is mostly from a perspective of how do we work with the eliminatory channels to move out what's no longer serving us, to clear the blood, help the digestion, and really support that. And then how do we reinforce and rebuild the microbiome and ways to support our health that way? But I also want to take us to another level where if you're from the ideology that we are more than just a physical body, we're a mental, spiritual, emotional self as well. How do we take cleansing and this idea of a detox or a cleanse or a clearing and put that onto our other aspects of ourselves? Can we do a little bit of a social media cleanse while we're cleansing? Can we do a little bit of a, maybe if we've gotten to the habit of watching Netflix, can we do a fast from that? Can we do a cleanse of our spiritual self where we start to add meditation in or journaling? Can we do a mental cleanse where we look at our whatever our disposition is, whether we're feeling a little bit low energy, depressed, anxious, and work with creating tools to support ourselves through this process. So I would invite for you to consider why we do a cleanse as kind of something more than just a physical body, not just to heal my gut. I know if I cleanse, I'm going to live a healthier, longer life. It's good for all those things that I've been doing over the winter months that I might want to shed off, but it's also an opportunity to change around addictions and habits and patterns around that way. So for myself, one of the biggest ones for me when I'm doing cleansing is I like to make sure that I get out in nature more. Um, from a perspective of what we're going to be drinking tea, a lot of tea. So change my habits. If I'm drinking alcohol, I'm going to cut that out. Coffee, I'm going to cut that out. And I'm going to just focus on tea and water from a kind of more emotional alchemy perspective, thinking about what no longer serves me. What have I been, what kind of reinforced narratives have I been telling myself that no longer serve me? How can I start to move that out? So we'll start there, but let's look at like why else might we want to cleanse? Really, why embark on a cleanse is that we want to look at our diet first off. Um, this is an ideal season in the spring to transition diet. If you look out into the natural world, all the little shoots are starting to come up. Now, I know if you're in certain parts of Canada, it's still snow on the ground, but you can feel it in the air, right? The buds are starting to swell on the trees. The dandelions are starting to pop through. We're seeing a lot more green. I'm here on the West Coast, and it's, nettles are already a foot tall. The dandelions have already got flowers on them. This isn't typical everywhere. But at the same time, even just being in that kind of ripe energy for new growth, the renewal process makes it an ideal time to start to cleanse. We also want to look at that what is in those plants at this time of year is often quite nutrient rich. This is the time of year where we see that in the natural world. So it also lends well to our body wisdom to start to pack our diet with more nutrient rich foods, more antioxidants, more green chlorophyll, more things like that. So salads, all this kind of stuff we want to get into. It's also a time where we can start to really gently eliminate toxins from the body. So really, spring is the best time to do a tune-up. My suggestion is start with 10 days to 2 weeks. What is that going to look like? If we're looking to embark on a spring cleanse, the very first thing we need to do is look at our fridge. What's in our fridge? What is it that may or may not be serving us? Can we move that out of our pantries and our fridge? Do we have a lot of extra pasta? Do we have a lot of kind of dairy in our fridge, or do we have a lot of cheese or sweets in our pantries? Get that out of the house first off. And then also, I really suggest finding a cleansing partner, an accountability buddy, as we would call it, someone who you can chat with about the things you're going through, whether that's a partner, a loved one, a family member, or just a friend that you can both engage on this kind of accountability to healing and cleansing our body and cleansing our diet as we go along. And then do some shared meals, do some meal prep, do some planning. I tend to like to start a cleanse on a weekend or a time when I have 2 or 3 days off so that I can actually really take the time to do some of that meal prep. The most successful thing when it comes to creating a cleanse is having the right framework to work from, both mindset, but also in our pantries and on our time. So start with success if you're going to do a cleanse, and start with a couple of days off. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the biological pathways in the body that are activated when we start cleansing. We have 4 eliminatory channels, plus the liver, which is our channel for detoxification. Skin being our largest organ, it's useful when we're doing a cleanse to also consider how can we engage the skin to be able to move toxins out that way. Being our largest organ, it's like easy to really move a lot of toxins out of our body through the skin. And this can be done through hot and cold therapy. Even if we do cold dips, ice dips have become a really classic thing these days for helping to stimulate the immune system and really build and fortify and strengthen the body, and to give us a little bit of a energy boost. So that might be something we think about. Can we start with a cold shower, but also getting hot? So can we go to the sauna throughout our cleanse? Can we book in a time to do a hot tub and a cold shower and do that hot, cold, hot, cold? Or if we're just at home, can we try to go back and forth between cold, hot, cold in the shower? I tend to, after doing this for a while, I finish every single shower with an ice rinse kind of thing at the very end. And oh, it's just so good. I feel so much more awake. If I come out of a shower that's hot, I'm a little bit groggy comparatively or relaxed, but it's really nice to have that ice dip or that ice shower and be like, okay. That also tightens the pores as we expand them with the heat and tighten them. The contraction and expansion of pores really helps move toxins out of our body. Now, the other three eliminatory channels are a little more, I guess two of them are a little more intuitive, our kidneys and our colon. We always want to work with these together in pushing out and eliminating toxins. The kidneys are our water pathway where a lot of water-soluble toxins can easily move out of the body. So it's really worth looking at some of the kidney herbs. And when we come to work on the liver, we want to also always focus on the kidneys, because as we detoxify stuff, we want to move it out through the kidneys. And this is just kind of we call the 1-2 punch of cleansing, which is work on detoxifying through the liver, but find an eliminatory channel to move that through. We'll talk about some herbs that can be useful that way and some ways we can work with kidney cleansing, but really think of it as a good way to also pull out uric acid in the system, to flush out different toxins in the blood stream, to also work with some of our hormonal load as we process that through the liver. This is a great way to kind of work with the kidneys. The colon, of course, we may want to incorporate some kind of laxative, and even if not, we might want to work with some parasite-killing herbs, some biome recorrecting type of foods, and herbs that can support that. So we'll talk about things like black walnut and wormwood and herbs that can actually work with biome recorrection. Now, we're not focused in a cleanse on biome building. That's going to be more in a building phase. So we're not going to look at probiotics and things like that while we're cleansing. Those are for after a cleanse to reestablish good, healthy colonies in our gut. Think of your gut as your ecosystem, right? So what is the state of your ecosystem right now? For many of us in the West, well, the Western diet, if we follow the kind of standard American diet, as they call it, the SAD diet, the colon kind of looks like a clear cut. There's a lot of, well, I'll say like glyphosate and the wheat and in the foods that are accessible on ease. There's a lot of sugars in them. And this creates more of a fungal overgrowth colon and more environment for parasites and kills a lot of the bacteria that are good for us, as well as inflames the lining of the colon. So we're going to definitely need to look at dietary shifts when we do a cleanse. We can't just focus on the herbs. I can't just take tinctures and teas and expect the cleanse to work. We really need to do a bit more of the diet. And the lungs, I would say, are something that is maybe less thought about when it comes to cleansing, but understand that as we move catarrh out, when we get sick, we move out mucus. As we breathe, we are moving out toxins. How can we engage our lungs as part of our cleansing? One of my favorites is really, really simple, is just doing a little bit of Wim Hof. So a little bit of that heavy breathing and then holding on the out breath. Do that a couple of times a day. You can really engage the lungs and help to support not just oxygenating the cells, but also cleansing out some of those toxins through that pathway. We might also look at things like head steams and essential oils, or look at doing a bit of exercise and really getting the lungs engaged. So think of them as part of your eliminatory pathway that can really support the cleansing process. The concept here, my friends, is we're trying to shed what no longer serves us, and we're using all the biological pathways we have at our disposal to really help maximize that effect. We're going to do this for 2 weeks, so we might as well engage fully when it comes to doing a cleanse. All right. So the two stages that I think of that are in a sustainable action around cleansing is cleanse and build. And this is kind of, I classically call it the wax on, wax off, or I guess in this case, wax off first and then wax on. We're going to clear what no longer serves us and then restore and restructure the way we want to show up. So this could be part of our reprogramming our diet and part of our reprogramming our mental and emotional states, and maybe seeing if we can get some sticky practices around meditation or forest bathing or walking or just better habits to go along with our dietary changes and to go along with some of our other supportive things in the building phase. We're going to start with cleansing though, because that's where we got to go. And I'll tell you, a lot of people I know who do a regular cleanse, it also helps them release some of the guilt of maybe eating the whole jar of peanut butter or doing some foods that they know were not good for them that made them feel bad. Maybe they had a standard North American waffle diet for a while and like, oh, I really need to cleanse. Maybe they partied too hard. Oh, I really need to cleanse. As much as we know these things we shouldn't do them. Often the dopamine and the kind of oxytocin bonding hormone to our habitry can be overwhelmingly convincing to, yeah, eat the whole jar of peanut butter, as we might say. So how can we moderate in a cleanse? And how can we start to change those neurological pathways? This is a big key to the success of building sustainability in our health over the long run. And even in clinical practice, when I was doing clinical work with my father, he said, one of the biggest things in our apprenticeship was almost everybody, doesn't matter how hard of a chronic disease they come in with, no matter what their external symptoms might be showing, if we start them with a cleanse first, it's a lot easier to actually make a difference and an impact on those things. To just shift this around for ourselves, we might be thinking our biggest issue is chronic fatigue. Well, if we do a cleanse first, it'll be a lot easier to tackle that. So that's my invitation, is that this is always the first step before kind of addressing the symptomology of what's going on in our body. Let's clear a little bit. And we only, though, want to cleanse, just as a little side note, we want to cleanse when we're in a fairly good state of vitality. It's not ideal. I guess I call it a crime against wisdom to cleanse when we're super depleted and super weak, right? That's why spring is a good time. The energy of the environment around us is all about, okay, there's abundance coming, and everything in nature is getting excited, doing a little dance in their roots to have a big summer party. So it's a good time to work with the inertia of all that uprising energy. Okay, so let's talk about cleansing first. Our spring detox protocol. Number one, first thing is diet. Now, herbs are amazing. There's lots of ways to work with cleansing that way, but actually the diet should be our number one focus. And as I mentioned, I'm just gonna have some tea because I'm realizing I'm talking so much. As I mentioned earlier, we want to get all the things out of our fridge that are no longer serving us. Really, really simple from a high level. Our diet and a cleanse should be mostly alkaline and neutral foods and less acidic foods. That means less things like red meats and coffee and tomatoes, as far as like those kind of foods, and more alkaline greens, and then more neutral. This pH shift in our diet will really help to start to stimulate that cleansing process. So in general, look at that, but also try to break out, again, from a high level, what are really simple sugars. Know that anything simple like a flour product or a sugar product, it breaks down really quickly into energy in the body, and our body doesn't get a lot of that energy. Our microbiome does. So if we're feeding ourselves pasta, waffles, bagels, wraps, bread, or sugar products and all that kind of stuff, we're feeding the candida in our system and some of the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, the SIBO type bacteria, that is going to create more imbalance in our body. If we give ourselves more complex foods, things that take a little longer to break down, it starts to build almost what I'll call permaculture gut design, right? So we kind of know this, but that's sort of where we need to get our head around. It's like, if this takes down in my body, it'll create more, as I'll say, like leaf litter that'll compost and actually create a better home for the biome that I want to have, right? How do we build a proper ecosystem? It's through slow breakdown, not fast breakdown. So we want to look at just pulling all those things out. That includes things like fermented beverages. I love kombucha, but I'll tell you the way most people brew kombucha, especially commercially brewed kombucha, it's a lot of undigested sugar, unfermented sugar. So they're still quite sweet. We're still feeding ourselves. They might be good for our diet, but not during cleanse. And especially things like beers and wines. Again, well, they're made of basically sugar, and so we want to kind of eliminate those types of fermented things. During a cleansing process, we might look at stuff like sauerkraut and kimchi as good things, but really we want to highlight those in a building process as we're trying to rebuild and reestablish the microbiome. Those kind of foods can be key. We also want to stop taking any kind of supplementation that might be building. So this is things like our B vitamins and vitamin C. I know you might think, well, they're really good for me. Well, during a cleansing process, the point is cut all that out and shed, right? And the intent we're shedding that. And what we really are trying to do is create an environment that is conducive for releasing what no longer serves us from a biological perspective, from moving out and shedding toxins. So we don't want to take our essential fatty acids. We're not looking at all our vitamins and minerals and these types of things as supplementation. We're going to replace that with cleansing herbs. So that's the basic nuts and bolts of the diet. We're going to look at foods that are also extra cleansing. I would invite stuff like onions and garlic that are naturally cleansing and pulling out toxins as a bigger part of our diet. If we're going to eat meat, fish is going to be a much better source than a lot of animal proteins in that way, especially if we know that it's wild fish or it's been, raised in a way that is healthy. We're going to see that as a much better food. The challenges that I have with the commercial meat industry is that they're using a lot of GMO wheat and that to feed animals. And I'm not convinced that that's the best food for me to be putting in my body, especially during a cleanse. So often if we focus a little more vegetarian, we're going to see better success, but that might also mean like whole grains and a lot more beans and green leafy vegetables, fresh organic as much as possible, within, understanding of our dietary and our budgetary restrictions. It's pretty expensive to buy food these days, so do the best you can, and just avoid all those simple sugars and simple carbs. Likely, you're going to get a craving for those foods. I've found one of the best ways to work with a carbohydrate craving is actually to add a protein into the diet. So one of my very favorite cleanse snacks is rice cakes with almond butter and apple slices on top. I don't want to have the honey or the jam that has sugar in it, but a slice of apple on top can give me that sweet taste. The rice cake can fill that hit for some kind of simple carbohydrate, but I'm using a nice thick layer of butter or almond butter in this case to be that protein. The other thing I've seen people find success is having a little bit of jerky or having some kind of like salmon jerky or chunks of smoked salmon. That can be really good. Or nuts, right? A big bag of mixed nuts can be a great way to work with our cleanse too. Again, protein can help to alleviate a simple carbohydrate craving. So have access to good protein when you're feeling snacky and you want to have chips or you want to have a piece of toast or whatever that might be, because that might come up if that's been part of your diet. It definitely is the hardest part, I think, of cleansing is really that shift around. We're going to mix this with a tea and tincture protocol. So we're going to typically want to do in a cleanse like 2 different types of tinctures and a couple of different types of teas. And from a dosage perspective, we're going to be doing those twice a day. I've got right here the TLC, which is, you can see it maybe in my camera, which is one of the ones that has both dandelion and burdock. I'm going to want to take, while I'm cleansing, these droppers, about 2 to 3 of those twice a day. If not, consider that I could probably take down this whole 25 ml bottle in 10 days, maybe 15 days, which means I need at least 2 meals a day. So consider that, yeah, I would invite that I could actually take this whole bottle down in 10 days, 3 meals a day, right? So yeah, that math kind of works. Actually, not quite, but imagine 3 to 4 milliliters of tincture throughout the day. Sometimes when it comes in, I'll just kind of touch on tinctures really quickly. We'll get into that, but I tend to, when I'm cleansing, like to take lots of small batches of tincture throughout the day, whereas typically we suggest that you do 2 or 3 droppers first thing in the morning, 2 or 3 droppers, or helps to cleanse the liver and really protect the liver as well. It also stimulates bile. It works with the kidneys and helps to cleanse the blood. Yeah, EFAs are essential fatty acids I see in the questions. So dandelion is one of my favorite spring cleansing herbs. And in fact, one way you can do a cleanse, and I did this a couple of years ago, and I thought it was a great cleanse, was before you've eaten anything in the morning, go out and pick 7 to 8 dandelion greens and just eat those. Up to 20 is totally fine. But I did this every day for a while, and I found this to be really a successful cleanse, really simple. Still in that fasting state where I had nothing in my digestive system, I'd eat a bunch of dandelion greens first thing in the morning. Not only was this good for my mental state to get outside and tune in with some plants, but also it's the best time for me to optimize getting that dandelion cleansing energy into my body. That's a simple cleanse just on its own. You can just do that. Just eat dandelion greens for 2 weeks as part of your diet. That's a great little cleanse. Burdock is also, both dandelion and burdock are these deep tap roots. And they do in the environment, they help aerate the soil or aerate the land. They also do that for helping aerate our liver to help to create more spaciousness and better flow within the liver so it can work on eliminating out toxins. Both work with the lymphatic system, burdock being a little more predominantly to help move out toxins through that, and dandelion being a little more with the blood. But both have that capacity, as well as they both help with our digestion. So dandelions have that little bitter flavor. Burdock has a little more of the inulin in it, and it can work with protective qualities for the digestive tract, for the mucosal membranes, as well as they both increase circulation. And burdock has a really great ability to work with our skin. So those are both in this cleanse formula, and that's kind of, well, the liver formula anyway. I'm just going to keep taking tinctures. So you can see how like easy it is in a lot of ways. Take it regularly throughout the day. No problem. So yeah, those are 2 of our great liver herbs. There are lots of other ones too, right? These are not the only ones. I love to work with yellow dock, some of the digestive herbs that are bitter, like the gentian we'll talk about. Those have some great qualities for working with the liver as well. And a lot of the herbs, like, yeah, there's a number of other herbs we can work with. Artichoke, radish, these are some great liver herbs. Some of the medicinal mushrooms like turkey tail have an affinity for working on the liver. But really, dandelion and burdock are probably the 2 best ones in my mind to start with. Now, we also want to always, again, support the liver, but really liver, digestion, and kidneys are going to be kind of our main focus around working with cleansing. So for supporting the digestive system, I often like to start right at the top of the digestive system. How can I work with herbs that are going to support working on the digestion from the top level? So meadowsweet is one of my very favorite herbs. This is one that's in our herbal bitters, but it's also in our Calm Valley tea, which is the tea I'm drinking right now. Although I'm not cleansing, so but we can still drink good digestive tea. This herb helps to stimulate better, I guess, stomach acid in that sense. So it works with the mucosal membrane of the stomach, helping with ulcers and gastric juices in general, but it is really good for an overactive digestive system. I like to start at the stomach versus the lower intestinal tract because this is where our digestion starts, right? And just kind of there. We can look at some herbs that are going to support our lower digestive tract, but right after a meal or when we start our cleanse, this is kind of the type of herbal protocol we want to look at. Things like milk this or like meadowsweet and gentian. Gentian has that nice bitter. They call it king gentian or one of the king of the bitters in that sense, and it really can help stimulate better digestive flow as well as work with assimilating nutrients and just supporting digestion in general and having a good detoxification process. We'll also see both meadowsweet and gentian work with things like heartburn, gastritis, and also just a little bit of support with any kind of upper digestive stuff. Gentian has more of that capacity to also support things like diarrhea and other kinds of lower digestive tract issues as well, because it has some of that worm killing quality, some of that anti-parasitic quality to it as well. They both also have, well, actually not so much meadowsweet, but gentian also really stimulates the liver and works with the gallbladder as well. So it's just a good herb for bile flow and nutrient absorption. Both of these have that capacity. Meadowsweet, though, is just a beautiful taste, and it's just a great herb to get to know. The queen of the meadow, really good old European herbal remedy for a lot of different things around digestion, and really a tonic for the stomach in general. So it's one of my favorite herbs. I love mixing it with peppermint. I love mixing it with fennel. Sometimes I'll add some of those kind of herbs in there. In our calm belly tea, that's where we have, I think it's a meadowsweet, peppermint, fennel, a little bit of gentian, and I know there's something else in here. I can't put my nose on it right now. So let's go to the lower intestinal tract. We're going to look at working with herbs for the microbiome. This is key. Now, there are lots of different ways we can work with this. Some herbs like podarco and cat's claw are great herbs too for killing candida. Those kind of herbs are good. Garlic, like I mentioned from the garlic and onions, great for killing parasites and candida and just in general for our digestive system. Golden seal and Oregon grape are other great antibacterials that are good for the digestive system. But we want to focus today, we're going to focus on some of the anti-parasitic herbs, and they're not just anti-parasitic. But black walnut and wormwood are two really great herbs to sort of think about, and they're ones that we put in our parasite purge to work with cleansing the microbiome. First off, black walnut is full of antioxidants. It's got some polyunsaturated fatty acids as well, and it's really just helpful for anti-parasitic qualities and really expelling worms as part of the idea, but also just increasing the bile and digestive juices and working with, well, like one of the ingredients in there is jugalone, and that, if you look at the plants, the black walnut puts out the jugalone into the soil so that no other plants can grow in its environment, and it kind of basically takes over that area. For cleansing purposes, we want to use this jugalone as part of our clearing out those critters that are no longer serving us. We're going to rebuild that microbiome, and we want to create an environment that is easy for our Acidophilus bifidus cultures to regrow into. When it comes to black walnut, we want to use the fruit, but it's actually the hull of the fruit. So we dry out the hull, and that's where all the antioxidants and all the jugalone is. So we're not using the leaf. You can see the picture here. It's got the little fruit. It's actually the hull around the walnut, not the actual nut itself. And even English walnut has that quality, but the black walnut's much higher in antioxidants and is just the one that has been classically used in herbal medicine. Wormwood, on the other hand, is one of those herbs that has a lot of different benefits. Even the name wormwood, you're like, okay, is this good for worms? Why, yes, it is. How did you know? But it also really improves digestion and works with the liver function. It's been a classic remedy for intestinal parasites, but we also see that it's used for things like fevers and intestinal spasm and upset digestion and stomach support too. So overall, it's just clearing and cleansing the whole digestive system. Okay, so those are some parasitic herbs. I tend to see our parasite purge tincture as just a really good go-to when it comes to working during a cleanse. So I might pick out 3 tinctures or 4, whether it's liver, kidneys, and upper digestive tract, or maybe liver, kidneys, and lower digestive tract. And typically I would add in some of those herbal bitters throughout that time as well. So the 4 tinctures that we're suggesting might be useful in a cleanse would be really your parasite purge, your liver TLC, your kidney clear, and your herbal bitters. I think I missed one. I'm pretty sure I did. I'm going to go back. I missed kidneys. Oh my goodness. I missed a slide here. So kidneys, because I was like, this is one of my favorite. Juniper berries are an old anti-plague remedy that I thought was really cool to suck on juniper berries. They help kill pathogens and they're really have an affinity for the blood, the lymphatic system, and of course the kidneys. They gradually restore kidney function and they really increase the circulation and promote better sweating in the skin. They have an antibacterial and antifungal quality to them. So they're also going to work in the digestive tract. So if we make a kidney kind of clear flow tea, it's still going to have an effect on our kidneys because obviously it's a tea, but we're going to see some of that benefit for working with digestive, antifungal, and antibacterial as well. It helps to stimulate the digestive enzymes and it works with good reducing congestion, especially in the kidneys. And uva ursi is another great herb that way. It's got a good ability to help with the nephrons of the kidneys and really the filtration system of the body and work with removing uric acid buildup and protein buildup. Often uva ursi is used for bladder infections and cleansing and clearing the urinary tract. So just helping again as a gentle elimination for moving out toxins through the kidneys. This is a very rich berry. We use the uva ursi leaf, and there's a lot of antioxidants and bioflavonoids and all that kind of good stuff in there. Okay, so I'm going to go right back through those. We got liver supportive herbs, kidney supportive herbs, digestive supportive herbs, and microbiome cleansing herbs. All 4 of those are the areas we want to work with in our cleanse. And we could just do a tincture cleanse, but again, if we're getting rid of coffee and we're getting rid of alcohol and all that kind of stuff, we want to have something to drink other than just water. So really adding tea as part of our cleanse is a great way to do that too. So I would suggest these are the 3 teas that when we do a cleanse at my house, we basically stock up on a bunch of tea and we drink a lot of tea. So I rather than just getting one tea, like a cleanse tea, which has the podarco and all the other good cleansing herbs, the burdock in it, I would get 3 different teas and drink them throughout the cleanse, starting obviously with kind of that cleanse tea in the morning. And then around lunch tea, typically I would do our calm belly. And as an evening tea, I might do the clear flow or somewhere in between. Might do the calm belly with my biggest meal and do the clear flow during the day. And I would usually mix this up. So my favorite, I think, is the calm belly because I like the taste of it. But the cleanse tea, I think, is the most key. If I was going to get just one to work with a cleanse, I would be getting the cleanse tea for sure. Okay. There's a question around, is it okay to do iced tea? Tea is as good iced if you're not adding a ton of sugar. Remember with the diet, right? So how do we do that in a way? We do another tea called Songbird, which might be another good one to add in here. It's good for the mucous membranes, and it has a nice fennel, licorice kind of lemongrass flavor. That one would be great as an iced tea. We also do another one called Sea Breeze, which is what I put in the building, but you could also add that into the cleanse. That is one of our very favorite iced teas is the Sea Breeze tea. So have a look at Harmonic Arts and see some of the different types of teas. Remember that it's not like a one fits all package. Play with it. As long as you're drinking good quality herbal teas that are good for the digestion, like the ones I've mentioned, helping to clear the body, you're doing a big part of adding that to the diet. So another question I think is really useful to look at is about, okay, if I can't eat sugar, what can I do? And how do I work with like my craving for sweet? There are lots of fake sugars out there. I have mixed feelings around that. A lot of people love stevia and it works well. A lot of people like the monk fruit and it works well. The mannitol, there's a bunch of these different ones. My challenge is around, like, my intuition tells me that if I'm telling my body, oh yeah, we're eating something sweet, then I'm setting up my digestion for digesting sugars, but yet all of those have like a protein aspect and they're tricking the body. So no problem. Totally use stevia, but part of the idea around cleansing is we're trying to like connect different new circuitry in the brain and get ourselves out of that sugar craving. So yeah, once in a while, a little bit of stevia might be good, a little bit of those kind of things. But we want to stay away from sweet in general as a flavor during cleansing. So trying to like reprogram ourselves, and this isn't just sugar, and I'm seeing this coming in. It's maple syrup. Remember, you're making a commitment for 2 weeks to your digestive health, which will last for years. If you do this twice a year, okay, that's 4 weeks. But even if you just do this once a year, it's worth making the commitment to yourself to, I'm going to eliminate this for 2 weeks and see how it feels. So my recommendation is no honey, no maple syrup, no sugar of any kind, and allow that to be your new state for 2 weeks and make that kind of commitment. Trust me, once you do this, you will see that your nervous system starts to realign, blood sugars start to change in their balance, the capacity to feel clear and clean and vital comes right back. It's just like people who do the keto diet. At first, it's really, really difficult, but once they get into the ketosis state and they start to have their body flip over the way it works with its energy metabolism, it feels really good. So yeah, but don't take my word for it. Try it for yourself. You'll see how addicted you might really be to sugar. Like, oh, just a little bit of honey. Oh, just a little bit of that. This also means no tropical fruits typically. So one way I've tricked my body into sugar was I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just eat oranges. I love oranges. They're so good. Bananas, mangoes, papayas, dried fruits, right? I'll be like, oh, I can have raisins because they're a fruit, right? They're not a sugar. Well, when you dry the fruit, you're creating sugar. When you eat tropical fruits, they are quite high in sugar. So my invitation, stick to pears, plums and strawberries and apples and all of your temperate region fruits, and cut out any of those sugary fruits and cut out any dried fruit. Because again, you're still going to feed the unhealthy microbiome. And this isn't just because you want to restrict your diet, it's because you're actually trying to change around the biome that your body lives on a little bit for part of this cleansing process. So you're doing this for the good of the ecosystem, so to speak, not just because Yarrow said we shouldn't eat any sugar. All right. So we do our cleanse for 2 weeks. Always we want to follow that up with building back. And this means we want to keep some of that diet going. If we can manage 2 weeks, maybe we can manage 3 or 4 weeks. So I would invite you to keep that diet going, but just add in a few new things. Just a little bit more sauerkrauts, maybe some, if you do dairy, maybe some kefir or water kefir, maybe some of that kombucha could come back into the diet. But think about what are nutrient building foods now. So I've gone from elimination, like the garlic and onions and leafy greens. How do I build back with eggs and nuts and more of those greens and seaweeds and mushrooms and this kind of thing? How do we rebuild and restore our biome and give it all those extra vitamins and minerals and essential fatty acids, rebuild that for a couple of weeks afterwards? At least 1 week anyway, to just kind of follow up your 2 week cleanse. That's ideal. Remember to always stay hydrated. And we suggest our Harmonic Arts Sea Breeze tea during this time. But again, as I mentioned earlier, you can totally drink that tea during the cleanse. It's a great one, but that's a rebuilding electrolyte rich one. And now is the time when we might add in adaptogens. So when we're cleansing, we don't want adaptogens. We're not looking at medicinal mushrooms and these kind of things. We're clearing the body. But when we're building, we're looking at more of those restorative tonics, those adaptogens, those tropho restoratives for the body, and just really building that back up. So seaweeds are great. They're super mineral rich. They're high in vitamins A, B, C, D, E, K, you name it. Good calcium, good iron, Ones like nori have high protein in them. They're just a really great way. They can be used in a cleanse too, but they're another great add-in for supporting our digestive system. And this is something we have in our BioShield and our Sea Veg blend. So I would often get people to get a little bit of Sea Veg blend. BioShield is one of my favorite tinctures. It's one of the lesser known ones at Harmonic Arts, but it has this kind of EMF protecting quality, and it's got some adaptogens in there, some medicinal mushrooms, and just strengthening and supporting the vitality and pulling out radioactive isotopes and supporting us from our pocket gods, these cell phones that we carry around with us, to just kind of in that way cleanse from that stuff. So yeah, that's a good one. And then I'd also look at what kind of adaptogens do we want to add in. We do a tea called Adapt. This is a great tea to do almost like a chai style, where you're lightly simmering it and then what's called a decoction, and then rebrewing it 2 or 3 times. That's a great tea, and I totally recommend adaptogen teas, adaptogens in our smoothies, in our drinks, in our coffee, if we're doing coffee, or as an alternative to coffee. We might even do something like the Harmonic Arts Kickstart, which is another one of our elixirs that's kind of like a coffee substitute if we're feeling that way. It has more of those superfoods in it to really nutrify the body. But Eleuthero is also known as Siberian ginseng. This is one of my favorite adaptogens because it's very neutral in its energetics. It nourishes and regulates the adrenals, which is a huge kind of benefit. It also works with stress and anxiety and depression, and just has a big impact on supporting the overall health of our body. I'd say one of the biggest things around Siberian ginseng and ashwagandha and other adaptogens like this is we want to take them when we're not sick, but they help us from getting sick in the sense of just strengthening the immune system. And ashwagandha has become one of the most popular adaptogens on the planet in the last few years. It's very good for, I guess, restlessness and helping us get a deep sleep and calm our nervous system, but also strengthen our adrenals and support us with stabilizing better blood sugars and strengthen our muscles and give us more sexual fire and vigor and energy and boost both testosterone and fertility, both in men and women. So ashwagandha is just one of those primo herbs for that kind of energizing the body in that sense. Okay, we might also look at nutritive herbs when we're doing this type of thing, which is more of your calming the nervous system, like lemon balm does, or nettles, which is just highly nutritive, has a lot of protein in it, adds a good layer of vitamins and minerals, works with our nervous system, with our skin, with our liver, with our digestion. Nettles is my favorite spring tonic. In fact, my fingers all day yesterday were buzzing with nettles because I've been picking so much lately. And we're adding that to our foodscape right now as a big part of our dietary choices at this time of year. It's just a mild cleanse, we'll say, by eating wild spring greens like nettles. But they can make a great tea. They make a great tincture. We put them in our sea breeze tea. And lemon balm is a great way to make nettles taste good because they don't taste great. They kind of have this, I don't know, almost like more spinachy than spinach is, if that's a flavor, but kind of earthy, good flavor to me. But I also understand they don't have that like yumminess like the lemon balm does, and that one helps calm the mood and anxiety and just helps us sleep better, but also works with regulating our nervous system. So nutritives are good. I would add in adaptogens. I would add in nutritive herbs, and I would add in medicinal mushrooms. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But these are some of the teas and tinctures. The BioShield, the Sea Breeze, and the Adapt might be good ones to choose during our building process. And again, we're restoring. So we're changing our food a little bit. We're adding more of those things to restore the body back into its best health. And this is for like 1 week after our cleanse. Afterwards, too, we're going to look at stuff like medicinal mushrooms. This is where those come in because they are restorative and they're building up the immune system, supporting the body from chronic disease. Ones like reishi, chaga, and turkey tail are some of the most immunomodulating mushrooms. And we've done other great webinars on mushrooms. So I highly recommend you check out the webinar section at Harmonic Arts and look at some of the past webinars to go a little deeper into the medicinal mushrooms. For today's sake, we're just going to say that many of these are restoring and rebuilding the overall system. And ones like reishi are grounding and helping to promote better liver. Chaga's got that rich antioxidant, again, supporting the body in a lot of ways. Turkey tail is awesome for the digestive system and microbiome. Cordyceps gives us more energy and fortifies the adrenals and liver and kidneys. And lion's mane is working with our overall nervous system. So the 5 mushroom blend, which I got one here. This guy is probably my go-to. You can get it in a capsule, tea, or I guess powder or tincture. That's my go-to. I put that in my morning drinks almost every single day. Okay, so I wanted to keep this brief, keep this on time. We're a minute or two over time, but I think that's pretty good. That's our webinar. These are some of the ways to like look at cleansing. Again, from the higher level, how can you invite some different kinds of accountabilities through your cleanse? How can you change around habitry? Do this with a friend if you can. Get yourself set up for success by having all the right ingredients, as well as ingredients in your fridge. Start on a day that is easy for you to have some extra time. Cleansing is not always the most comfortable process for some people. They can get tired early, they can have challenges. Go to bed early, hydrate yourself well, and just overall take care of yourself through this process. Make a commitment for 2 weeks and see how you feel. You may find that some of these dietary practices stick and they're things you want to do regularly, ongoing. There's lots of great recipes at harmonicarts.ca. You can always follow us on Instagram for other great recipes as well. And we're just really here to support you with your herbal needs. As a company, we want to be the change we see, or we want to be the change we want to see in the world. So supporting you in your mental health, in your physical health is key to making you the better version of yourself in order to be the bigger change that we all are trying to achieve here on planet Earth in the 21st century. All right, so that's that for that.